Have you ever looked at a scar on your body one you got years ago and realized it doesn't hurt anymore, yet it still reminds you of where you've been? Emotional scars work the same way. They tell the story of battles you didn't think you would survive, nights when you prayed for just a little more strength, and moments when you wondered if God even saw what you were going through. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still standing, still searching for meaning in the wounds that once broke you. Have you ever asked yourself why God allowed certain pains to shape your life the way they did? Think of your heart as soil, fragile, soft, easily disturbed. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every loss is like a seed dropped into that soil. At first, it feels like destruction. It feels like someone dug deep into you with a shovel you never asked for. But what if those very wounds are the places where God plants the seeds of strength, compassion, and spiritual resilience? What if the scar you regret the most is the soil God uses to grow your calling? The Bible shows us over and over again that God works through wounds, not around them. Jacob walked with a limp after wrestling with the angel. Joseph carried the memory of betrayal from his own brothers. David hid in caves before he ever wore a crown. Even Jesus, our greatest example, rose with scars still visible on his hands. Those scars weren't signs of defeat, they were signs of victory. Proof that pain can be transformed, not erased. Proof that God's healing power is not the absence of wounds, but the redemption of them. So let's walk through 4 powerful ways God shapes you through the scars you carry. Because your wounds are not meaningless, and they are certainly not wasted. Number 1. God uses your scars to remind you of His faithfulness. Every scar has a before and an after. Before the heartbreak, before the loss, before the betrayal. In those moments, you didn't know how the story would end. You didn't know if you would ever heal, if you would ever forgive, or if you would ever find peace again. But the fact that it became a scar and not an open wound means God carried you through. Sometimes the enemy wants you to remember the pain, but God wants you to remember the deliverance. The scar you touch today is proof of a prayer He answered yesterday. When God told Israel, "Remember what I have done for you," He wasn't calling them to remember their suffering. He was calling them to remember His rescue. Your scars hold that same reminder. They whisper, "You made it out. God didn't leave you there." Number 2, God uses your scars to teach you compassion. Have you noticed that the people who comfort others the best are often the ones who have suffered deeply themselves? Scars make you gentle. They soften the parts of you that once judged others too quickly. They teach you to listen before you speak and to support others without needing to fix them. Think of Jesus appearing to Thomas after the resurrection. Instead of hiding his scars, Jesus invited Thomas to touch them to see his pain up close. He didn't pretend the wounds never existed. His compassion came from his willingness to be seen as the Messiah who suffered. When you allow God to heal you, your scars become evidence that you understand what others are going through. God turns your pain into a ministry. He turns your wounds into wisdom. He turns your darkest moments into the very things that help you lift someone else out of theirs. Number 3, God uses your scars to build spiritual endurance. Just like muscles grow through resistance, your faith grows through pressure. James 1-3 says, "The testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance is not built in comfort. It is forged in seasons when nothing makes sense, when prayers seem unanswered, and when you feel like you have nothing left." But look at what God does in those seasons. He turns the places where you were broken into places where you become unshakable. Think of Joseph in prison, falsely accused, forgotten by people, but not forgotten by God. His scars made him strong enough to handle a position he never imagined. Sometimes God lets you walk through wounds because the strength you will gain afterward is necessary for the calling He's preparing you for. Remember this, God is not punishing you by allowing pain. He is preparing you. He is shaping your character, refining your patience, and building a level of trust that cannot be destroyed. Number 4, God uses your scars as a testimony to others. A testimony is never about how strong you are, it's about how faithful God is. When you share what He has brought you through, you give someone else the faith to believe He can do the same for them. Your story might be the reason someone else doesn't give up. Your scar might be the light that helps someone else find their way in the dark. Think of the early disciples. They weren't remembered because their lives were easy. They were remembered because their faith endured difficulty. In your own life, the scars you carry may become the very thing God uses to draw others closer to Him. Not because you are perfect, but because you survived what should have destroyed you. And so, if you've ever looked at your scars and felt ashamed, unworthy, or permanently damaged, let me tell you this truth with absolute gentleness, but absolute certainty. God does not waste wounds. He heals them, transforms them, and turns them into markers of His glory. The very thing that once hurt you the most may someday become the very thing that inspires someone else to keep going. Have you ever wondered why God allows some wounds to stay visible long after the pain has faded? Sometimes He leaves the scar because someone else will need the story behind it. Sometimes He leaves the scar because it reminds you that you are not walking through life in your own strength, but in His. And sometimes He leaves the scar because the healing itself is a miracle worth remembering. A scar is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that the enemy tried to break you and failed. It is a sign that God stepped into your story and said, "This is not where it ends." Think of the waiting seasons in your life, the long nights when you prayed for clarity, the quiet moments when you begged God to take away the pain, the days when you walked forward even though you felt like collapsing. Waiting is not wasted time. Waiting is like the tilling of soil before a harvest. The farmer cannot see the seeds beneath the ground, but he trusts the process. In the same way, God works beneath the surface of your life, nurturing what you cannot yet see. He prepares you in the hidden places so that when the time is right, the strength that grew from your scars will stand firm and unshakable. God is not delaying your healing. He is deepening it. Sometimes healing doesn't look like forgetting. Sometimes healing looks like walking with a renewed heart, a wiser spirit, and a deeper reverence for the God who held you together. Look at Moses, marked by the trauma of his past, yet chosen to lead. Look at Hannah, broken by years of longing, yet raised to joy. Look at Job, scarred by loss, yet restored with abundance. Each of them carried wounds, but in those wounds God revealed His character, His patience, His mercy, His power to restore what was taken. When you look at your own scars through the lens of faith, they become reminders of a God who never abandoned you, even in moments when you felt too weak to pray. And maybe you've asked yourself, why did it have to happen this way? Why did God allow this wound in the first place? These are not questions of doubt. They are questions of relationship. They come from a heart that still believes God hears. Sometimes the answer comes in a whisper, because without this wound, you would not have discovered the strength I placed inside you. Other times, the answer is found in hindsight. When you realize the heartbreak that once crushed you is the same heartbreak that taught you resilience, humility, and spiritual maturity, like refining gold. God uses heat, not comfort, to reveal purity. When God heals you, He rarely takes you back to who you were. He makes you someone new, someone softer in spirit, but stronger in faith, someone less afraid of pain and more aware of purpose. Someone who can stand in the middle of life's storms and say with confidence, "This will not break me. I know who my God is." Your scars become the proof that God has rewritten your story, turning suffering into testimony, fear into courage, and brokenness into beauty. Picture a potter shaping clay on a wheel. Every pressure, every touch, every rotation has intention behind it. The clay doesn't understand the process, but the potter does. Your life is the same. Every wound, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer carries the gentle pressure of a God shaping you into something stronger and more purposeful. You may feel like life has pushed you, stretched you, or pulled you apart, but in the hands of God, those pressures become shaping forces. The scar is simply the mark left behind from the molding. It shows you have been shaped by the Creator Himself. And as God shapes you, He also equips you. The strength you build through wounds becomes the strength you will use to help others find their way. There will come a day when someone sits in front of you with tears in their eyes, carrying the same pain you once carried, and you will speak into their life with authority, not because you read about healing, but because you lived through it. God often heals you in ways that equip you to be a healer for someone else. Your scars become a roadmap for those who are still lost. But here is the most powerful truth of all. God's healing power doesn't just close wounds. It transforms them. He doesn't erase your past. He redeems it. He doesn't pretend the pain never happened. He gives it purpose. The cross itself is the greatest example. Jesus didn't rise without scars. He rose with them. Those scars were not symbols of death. They were symbols of a victory so complete that not even the marks of suffering could diminish it. In the same way, your scars are not reminders of defeat, they are reminders of resurrection. They remind you that God brings life out of what was meant to destroy you. So if you are walking through a season where your heart feels heavy, where your wounds feel fresh, or where your faith feels fragile, hear this: God sees you. God is with you, and God is healing you in ways you cannot yet see. The strength you are building now will carry you into every season that lies ahead. The scars you carry will become markers of His love, His faithfulness, and His ability to bring beauty out of brokenness. You are not defined by what hurt you. You are defined by the God who is restoring you. And if this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of your value, your resilience, and the healing power of God, then make sure you subscribe, stay connected, and join this community of faith. Your journey matters. Your story matters. And there is so much more ahead for you. Let's walk this path together.